Heyo, everyone. Welcome to the Chaotic Wholesome Talk Show. I am one of your co-hosts, Kay Purcell. I'm here with David, and we are living our best day today, but that is like a thing and a place. So please, as always, let us know how volumes are. I didn't even turn on Bardley. This is where I am today. I didn't even put on our background music because I was
Right.
busy fighting with stuff. While I set that up, David, tell us who you are and what we is doing here.
I am. I was gonna think of something funny to say, and then listen. We're having a time. But
We are.
hi, I'm David. Welcome to the Welcome to Chaotic Wholesome presents the Table Talk Show, where every week we talk about TTRPG stuff, how to be a better player, how to be a better GM, how to be a better person, all with a focus on intersectionality and inclusivity, so that everybody can have a good time.
And yes, as I said before, I am Kay. You can find me every other Wednesday on the Emergency Power Podcast. I'm literally we have a new website, y'all. Chaotic Wholesome Presents. It's all fancy. We have a streaming schedule there, and I was like, when am I doing it? Because here's the thing, I got stuff happening that I can't talk about yet, or that I probably could talk about that hasn't been officially announced yet. So that just complicates everything, like just everything. Um, what is today? Today is the 25th. So tomorrow a new episode of the Emergency Power Podcast happens, which is spicy. It's all about my character's background, and it only took us like freaking 20 episodes to get there. So that's cool. And then Thursday I'm streaming Pokemon, and y'all, we're going to get a shiny. I swear to all the gods. This time we're actually going to get a shiny. I swear. Maybe. And then I don't know, David.
Yeah, I am streaming Overwatch Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, depending on Tech Gremlins. But yeah, be there or be all right angles.
And David has been doing Overwatch 2 solo queue.
Yeah. Ooh,
And that's
yeah,
that's the whole thing.
it is a whole thing.
And we're not going to spend too long on that because, like I said, we got stuff to talk about, and I got to see if I can make this behave. Um, but the topic for today, and I know there's at least a couple people in chat who are excited to talk about this because at least one person in chat, without giving too much away, has reached out to at least one of us on this call to talk about being a player at their table. And so one of the things we wanted to talk about was, and this was actually inspired by a friend of the show, Katiosaurus, who was talking about a thing that I feel like a lot of us, tabletop is interesting. If you reach a certain point, isn't necessarily the word, right? But if you reach a certain point, you start feeling like no one asks you to be part of stuff anymore because people are intimidated because you're too big a deal to be part of stuff. But if you're like, I'm just a small streamer and I just do small stuff, I can't ask this person because they're big and important, then you never get these people in your games. And David and I have had a part of me wants to say reasonable. The realistic part of me wants to say a phenomenal amount of success
Yeah.
reaching out to incredible creators that we admire and have been watching for years and had them join our games. Um, so we thought maybe we'd spend a little bit of time today talking about that.
Um, Visibility. There's a certain amount of visibility because so like Katiosaurus and other creators have talked about how um, TikTok doesn't necessarily convert to other platform engagement. And that's a whole different discussion that is outside of my realm of expertise. But Um, the same can be said for a lot of different, not necessarily platforms, but types of content. And so you'll see certain faces in the TTRPG community and be like, oh, this person is a big deal, and they'll be struggling to find a game, or they'll be struggling to find the game that they want. Um,
Or you work up the courage after months of like, and you reach out and they're like, oh my goodness, no one ever asks me to play. And you're
yep,
like, but you're a legend.
right. Um, and we've had people that we've approached that have, you know, said to us, "Oh man, I would love to play, except I just signed up for the first thing that I've had in months."
And I will also say this expands to beyond the tabletop space where it's just, I don't want to say celebrities because I am definitely not telling you, hey Rayon, I am definitely not telling you to like go message your favorite person, your favorite actor on Stranger Things because apparently they had never played D&D before
Yep.
they did the D&D game reunion. Like only like one or two of them had ever played D&D. I'm not saying do that, but like there are people who are, you know, B and C list celebrities who are known for various things. And they have said, "I love D&D. I wish people would invite me." And then people don't. And I have known these individuals who when someone finally asks them, they're like, "This is amazing." Like there's an author I know who I had been out of touch with for probably a decade, and they showed up on a game of one of my friends because one of my friends found out that they played D&D. And so they reached out and said, "I'm doing a charity game. Do you want to come and play?" And they were like, "No one ever asks me. I'm so excited to get to play D&D again." So that's a lot of gassing up to say, don't be afraid to reach out to people you admire and ask if they want to play. That also comes with a great big asterisk. And we tend to say this every time we do a show, and we will continue to repeat this, which is that no one owes you their time.
Absolutely.
No matter how cool your game is, no matter how amazing and honorable your charity that you're playing for might be, no one owes you their time. And that can be something of a hard pill to swallow. And it can be an even harder pill to swallow when someone says, "Yes, I'm interested." And then they don't reply after that. Because that happens. And it feels very inconsiderate, but you also have to remember that there is a guilt to saying no.
Yeah.
And if you've said yes, and then someone says, "Great, we're playing this day at this time," and you can't do this day and this time, even the people that you're like, "This person's a big deal. They're on top of the world." You don't know what's going on in their life. You don't know
Yeah.
what insecurities they're struggling with. So telling you, who were the first person to invite them to a game in ages, that you can't make it might be a little bit more than they can handle on that particular day. Not
And
saying it's
again,
right.
we've been very fortunate because in things that we've casted, people have been very open and very communicative about what's going on with them. And sometimes it's just scheduling conflicts, like they got stuff going on. Sometimes it's like, oh, well, I would love to show up on that day, but I have a wedding, my wedding that I have to go to. And um you know uh 99% of the people in the TTRPG computer, 99% of the people in the TTRPG community have day jobs. And so, in addition to all the other life stuff that happens, you also have the, oh, well, I would love to, except I'm working at that
Right.
hour. And a small tip. What is it? What is the day that everybody schedules for?
Everyone tries to schedule for Thursday, apparently, which is really
Hmm.
funny because there's many reasons people can't do a Thursday, and Critical Role happens, which is the Death
Right.
Star. And look, we ran a game on Thursday. God Plane happened
Hmm.
on Thursday, and we were like, we will be done by 10 p.m. Eastern because we're not fighting the Death Star.
Amen.
And hey, oh, Clint, welcome. Clint was on as a guest last week. And yes, we are talking about when you are trying to fill out a table for your TTRPG. How do you reach out? How do you even get the courage to reach out? Which is really, we kind of skipped that whole, all the different points we were going to cover. And normally I try to be good about that because I was an English major with a focus in communications. So tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them is kind of the outline. But I'm having a day.
Yep.
I'm frazzled.
We're also putting the chaotic in chaoticals.
We are putting the chaotic in chaotic. Yes, exactly. Um, but yeah, so we just jumped right into what I think is a good little gas you up, like pedal to the metal. Don't be afraid to ask because you shouldn't be afraid to ask. And as we said, again, I will repeat it as many times as I need to. Don't be afraid to ask, but remember that no one owes you their time. Someone saying no is their right. It's not an insult against you, and you cannot take it personal. Not getting a reply sucks, but again, it's not a slight against you, and you cannot take it personal. But I think David and I have both been, maybe me more so than David, actually, because David seems to have put me on some sort of pedestal. Not going to lie. It's great to have a David in your life. Gilmore just put a paw on my shoulder and said, "Excuse me." Um, uh, the number of people who have said yes, like where I've been like, "This won't happen, but I'll ask," and they've said yes.
Yep.
Uh, Matt Mimics and Misfits says, question, what do you think is considered crucial information when asking an actual play? Like, what should you personally know before asking?
What you should personally know is one, literally anything about what you're running. Um, because I don't get asked very often, but I have heard some horror stories. Like, did not know what system they were running, did not know the story that. There's our third co-host.
Mm-hmm. The tiny terror is being a tiny terror.
But yeah, didn't know what system they were running, didn't know what like story or setting. Um, didn't have a time or a day picked out. Didn't have like a scope in terms of like when the game was going to run, because it's one thing to say, hey, I'm running this game in June, it's for this event, or we're running a 4th of July game. And it's another thing to say, well, I'm thinking of running this sometime between like October and January, so when are you free? um and the
Well,
same
and
thing to like your system, because I've heard, oh well, we can do this, that, or the other. We could do it in Pathfinder, or we could do it, what do you like, 5e, do you like 3.5? We could, and it's just like, you have to approach someone with some sort of plan.
and to a certain extent, I don't mind if you don't have everything like completely nailed down. Because if you come to me and say, like, hey, I'm running a sci-fi game and I know it's going to be sci-fi, I've got the basic idea. We might be doing it 5e Spelljammer, we might be doing it Starfinder, we might be doing Mothership, depending upon how everyone feels. That I can understand to an extent, right? Because, like, okay, I've got the story. right? I know it's going to be sci-fi. We're going to use the system that most people are familiar with. But if you come to me and say, I'm going to run something, because if it's a system I don't know, then I have to learn it. And I need to know, if you tell me we're running a one shot in 5e, great. I already have pre-made characters. I know I've got at least half a dozen characters that I can pull out in 5e. Doesn't matter the level, I know them. If you tell me we're running a one shot in Star Trek, the TTRPG, and look, y'all, David knows I love Star Trek. I do. I love Star Trek. The quick start on the Star Trek TTRPG is 30 pages.
Yep.
That's I have to read 30 pages before I can even start to build a character. That's very different, right? Now, if you tell me we're going to run a campaign that's going to go 10 episodes in Star Trek, 30 pages is worth it. A 3-hour game, maybe not worth my reading. Now, maybe I just want to play Star Trek. I really want to play Star Trek. I really want to play the Star Trek TTRPG,
Don't
but I
threaten me with a
can't
good time.
play one shot.
And that's another important thing is knowing sort of like the scale of a game that you're going to run.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we ran Godplane, we are like, all right, 8 episodes. That means you got to put
Mm.
together 2 months worth of
Well,
this day in the week.
so actually, with Godplane, the second campaign, we said it's going to be 10 episodes. And then we sat down and looked at everyone's schedules, and everyone had the first 8 episodes, but those second two were a problem. So we said, you know what? This is the table that we want. So we're going to adjust the format so that it will be an 8 episode campaign. But so, hey, Ribbonanza. So this is, if I'm coming to someone with the thing, this is what I will come with: the system, if possible, or a limited number of systems, um, the number of episodes, if possible, days, because if I know I can only run a TTRPG on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I'm not saying those are the days I can play. I'm just saying, for example, someone might not be able to do those days, and that will let me very easily make a decision of can I do this or not. So give Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, starting sometime after 5 p.m. Eastern, or whatever your answer is, right? Throw that out. These are the potential days, and then we will figure out the days based on the party. The other thing I would really encourage you to do, and there are a couple different ways of doing this based upon how you want to approach it. But what David and I did with Godplane was we had a dream list. We had like 6 people in order of priority. And so we said, this is the first person that we know we want. So we reached out to them and said, this is what we're doing. This is the system. These are the days. And then, we said, it's a horror campaign, 10 episodes. This is the feel of it, because a horror versus a high school magical setting, very different. And then we said, we are thinking of inviting you and these additional 3 people. Any problems with that? Because I knew I wanted this person more than anyone else. And they said, I am fine with those 3 people. Great. We then reached out to number 2 on our list, gave all the same information, said, we have this person confirmed, and we're going to reach out after you to these 2 people. And then they have a chance to say, I really want to play, but I have a problem with this person, because let's be honest, in the TTRPG space, that sometimes happens. There are people who are problematic or who you just want to avoid. And like, so the other method is to reach out to everyone at once and say, we've built this table. These are the people who would be at the table with you. Would you be interested in playing? I've had that happen. And there was a person at one of the tables, and I really wanted to play in this game, but there was a person that I didn't want to be associated with. I straight up didn't want to play with. Posture checking, thank you. Not all personalities will get along. There's also, like, things can get a little bit complicated. There are some very quiet but real scandals that can happen. Um And I said, "I really wanna play at this table, I really wanna be part of it, but I am not comfortable playing with this person." And the person organizing the table said, "Totally understand. I just had someone drop out of the earlier table. Do you wanna play at this time with these people?" And I said, "Yes," and I got to play. So, you can specifically point out the person or you can say, "There's someone at that table I'm not comfortable with." But again, there is little worse than getting very excited about a table only to find out that there's someone that you potentially, don't wanna be associated with or that has done inappropriate things in the past, and it is awesome if you're able to reach out and do that. Um, One of the big things David, did you wanna we're gonna talk about when should you reach out soon, but I think you had a thing to say, David.
Right. And that leads to another sort of important thing that people skip. Also, I want to circle back to Raynox says, I just need to find a meat puppet to throw my ghastly spirit into. And that
That
one a
resonates.
mood
Yeah,
to yeah. But
that resonates.
another important thing is do your homework. Like
Hmm,
there are so like different people have different methods for getting in touch with them. Some people have a business email, some people you can DM on Twitter, some people have other means of getting in touch with them. And we try to do our homework in, okay, how do you get in touch with this person? um but we've heard people go, oh, I've been invited to stuff, but they message me on Instagram and I check my Instagram,
mhm,
once every 20 years. And so the game was over by the time I even knew that I was invited to it.
mhm,
And then that person feels bad because they're like, I unknowingly ignored this person, um and then and also it's gone. I have another point.
yeah. Well, I will say, like, yes, as a
Oh,
person, I also for those of you who don't know, I work in video games, and part of my job is to reach out to people that I want to play my video game on camera, that I want to give cash money to. Like, "We want to invite you to this thing to show up to be a part of this cool video game thing." And then they don't have an easy contact method. And I'm not saying you have to put your email address out there for anyone to be able to ping you, but tell us if you want to be invited to games, give an easy message. Tell us the best way because it used to be pretty common that I could just DM you on Twitter. And if your DMs were open, I DM'd you on Twitter, I was pretty sure I was going to get a reply. That's not the case anymore. Thanks,
yep,
Melon Tusk.
right. Um, the other part of doing your research is, you know, uh, like Kay does a better job than most people in terms of posting schedule. Like, if you want to know what Kay is doing on a particular day, there are like half a dozen places on the internet where you can go and get the
I
month
try.
calendar.
I try.
And so, if you want Matt Mercer to appear on your talk show, Thursday nights aren't going to be it. And we've talked to people who are like, oh man, I really wanted to play this game. They invited me to come play this game, but I've been in this campaign for 2 years on Wednesday nights, and they're playing on Wednesday nights, and so it's like, well, I guess I can't show up then.
We wanted to invite some of the Shakar people on, and it's like Shakar happens on a night where they're not coming here because I love Shakar and I watch Shakar,
Yep.
and I'm not gonna ask someone to be on a talk show an hour before they go live on a
Right.
stream TTRPG, right? That's not how you work. Also, do your research because certain people only play certain systems, and that for some people, that's a slight, and for some people, like, that's a feature, not a bug, right? Um If you invite Clint, who works for Pinnacle Entertainment, on Savage Worlds to a Savage World setting, Clint's probably going to be ready to go. I did invite Candace, who is not the biggest 5e player, but I invited Candace into a 5e campaign. And the first thing I said was, don't worry, we will teach you D&D 5e. We will not make you feel stupid. We will walk you through it. But like, know the level of experience that the player has, the potential player has with the system that you're trying to run. If you are doing, Gilmore is gone, so I'm readjusting the camera. If you're doing a new system that's in Kickstarter, obviously no one's going to know that, but make sure that you reach out to someone. There are some people who are like, I don't play Zoom D&D. I only want to play TTRPGs around a table. And if you reach out to them about playing on Zoom, they might not be nice because they've made it very clear in several locations that they don't play TTRPGs over Zoom. And sure, maybe they're missing out, but maybe they're living their best life.
Mimics and Misfit says, I feel much better about my preparations than I did 5 minutes ago. And the reality is, whether it's about TTRPGs or about like anything else, two things. One, common sense isn't necessarily common. And one of my favorite adages is that every um, every OSHA rule and law is written in blood. Like, I remember the first time I bought an iron. Like, I moved away from home. Actually, it was in high school because I went to
Mm-hmm.
boarding school. And you open up an iron, and I'm one of those people who just like reads the thing. It's apparently really weird to read the thing, but I'm reading the thing, and the first line on the first page is "Do not iron clothes on self." And I'm thinking to myself, what idiot would do this? And I'm like 14, and I'm like, this is stupid. This is dumb. And then time passes, and I wake up one morning, and I'm like, they put it there. They put it there so that because somebody at some company got a complaint that says, "Hey, I ironed the clothes while they were on my body, and now I am burned. What is wrong with you?"
Yeah.
And then they got sued. And it's like, excuse me?
Yeah. So Rayonk X says there's something to be said about playing your best self in a play environment where you feel comfortable, which is great. I have a really good friend that I play in the Emergency Power podcast with who can't handle horror at all. And I love playing with this person, but I will never invite them to play in Godplane because they don't enjoy horror and they need to live their best life and not feel like they need to play a horror game to make me happy. Savage Clint says, also don't be afraid to ask. I know a lot of us in the industry love playing outside games by other folks, and that is absolutely true. I will say, again, pay attention to which way the wind is blowing because especially influencers, especially the people who have who make their reputation off of the products of bigger corporations. This kind of came up. We did an episode, and we're not backtracking. We're not going back to it. The VOD is on YouTube, but we talked about the D&D Creator Summit and how a lot of creators are like, one of the things that was brought up is like when WotC makes a really bad decision, it's the creators who get harassed for it, and they don't get health care. They don't get help from that might change because this was brought up in the Creator Summit, but like they have no real contracts with the company. They're just playing a game that they love. And when WotC makes a bad decision, not that WotC has made any bad decisions recently, they get harassed for it. So do keep like, hey, I know that the OGL scandal's going on. It's the height of it right now, but do you want to come play a 5e game to a really big creator in the TTRPG space is maybe not the best move. Just, So again, And David and I said this at the beginning. Be more courageous than you feel like you should, especially if you know that you can run a good game. Maybe not your first stream TTRPG, right? Maybe not your, okay, I just downloaded OBS. I'm going to run a game streamed for the first time. Don't reach out to your favorite creator for that. Run a couple sessions, get the kinks out, deal with the audio issues, learn when and how your computer is going to ask. But once you know you can do a solid production, if you're like, I can do a story and I can make this look good and I can entertain one of my favorite people, then don't be afraid to reach out to those performers and those industry people that you really respect. And I've said it twice now, and I'm saying it a third time. No one owes you their time. They are allowed to say no without it being any sort of a slight or an insult to you. But I will say, I have been shocked by how many people will very excitedly say yes, especially if it is a shorter termed game. So less than 6 months. If you ask someone to play for 2 years every week, probably
Yeah,
not going to say
that's
no if they don't know you. Like, don't take that.
that's a hard ask.
But especially if it's a charity game, if it's a charity one shot, oh my goodness, people are so excited to help. And if you, again, if you're trying to break into the space, oh my goodness, charity games are amazing because not only do you get to give back, but so many more people are willing to contribute their time and take a chance on you because it's for charity and it's a one shot. So if it sucks, and y'all, I've been part of a couple charity games that suck. I'm not going to name names, but you won't find them on my website. If it sucks, it's 3 hours that you'll never get back, but you know who you're not going to play with again.
Well, it's more like 5 hours you'll never get back because there's like the prep and then there's that. But that's neither here nor there. But
Yes.
Raynox said mainly because I'd like to get into the actual play space, but it's hard to when I need to have a camera in a lot of the more open calls I've seen and might have been able to apply for. And that's another
Hmm.
important thing that you should have ready to go for your players is saying to them, okay, because there are streams and there are successful streams where it's like no one here is on camera or it's all VTubers or
Hmm.
all these other things. Um, like Kay is a part of Emergency Power Podcast. There, you don't there's no public
Hmm.
facing camera for a podcast. That's kind of the point. It's radio for the internet, as I have heard it described. Um, and so like format is another important thing
Hmm.
to have because if you say to someone hey, we're getting together for the stream, yada yada, and you're like, okay, and then you show up and your camera turns on and everybody else is a VTuber, you're gonna feel ways about that.
Yeah.
And that is something that you should communicate clearly to your players ahead of time.
Yeah, and I know again, a lot of streams do want faces because it is so much easier to connect to someone when the big reveal happens and they're like I'm going to talk about Holly Jolly Highsmiths, the first charity stream that we did here. We had a big reveal that the barbarian, it was a holiday themed heist. It's on our YouTube. We had a huge reveal that the barbarian who loved Christmas had done something that he would never have done had he known what was actually going on. And the best part is, and I asked after the fact, everyone else, all the players had figured out what was coming. They figured out what the twist was, except for the individual playing the barbarian. So when the reveal happened, wasn't even in character. It was just him as a human being going, and it's like, it's your turn. What you gonna do? I don't know.
I will panic
Joy.
at the disco.
Yes, pure joy. So I understand that. But I have played many a charity game when at least one player had no camera, was a VTube, or just had an image of their character up. Yes, a lot of places. A lot of streams want you to have a face cam. Um, and I understand that desire. What I will say is if you are trying to break into the space, invest in a good microphone. Your audio is actually more important than your video, especially on a screen with multiple people. And I will say this, if you are attempting to run a TTRPG stream, putting something together, audio, not using the microphone that comes built in with your laptop or webcam, is so much more important than if they have a face cam or not. It's one of the first things I say to people is like, get your webcam, get as good a mic as you can afford. As soon as you can, once you can afford to upgrade, first thing, don't upgrade your camera. Upgrade your mic and buy lighting, because it doesn't matter how good your camera is. If your lighting sucks, your camera's going to look like dog butt.
Dog butt.
Dog butt.
And not that old meme picture of the dog butt with Jesus in it, which circa 2004
Is that the belly
or
button tattoo? No, that's the cat butt tattoo.
also yeah, also cat, but you know the cat butt's more adorable. But um uh and it's funny because like even on this talk show, I'm on my fourth mic, I think. Um and you know, we're still calibrating, we're still
You got to fight with
um
yours. You're getting a little poppy. But we'll deal with that. We'll deal with that.
um but you know, the 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 biggest part of your performance, especially if you're doing like Kay said, like you're doing a stream with like you're doing a charity stream and you have 5 or 6 players plus the DM and miniatures and art and the other parts of the overlay, you're going to be a 50 by 50 pixel person on stream. But and what I have found out in working on TRPGs and in streaming video games is a lot of people don't watch.
Mm.
They throw it up, turn up the audio, and then go do whatever they're doing and listen to what you're doing. Like, Kay has consumed more TTRPG content than probably everyone in chat, me included, combined. Um, and I've been
Me?
over at her house and it's just on and she's like wandering around and doing stuff. And chat, you won't be able to see this, but you know a TTRPG is good when Kay will stop in the middle of the kitchen, like there's food on the stove, and she's just listening.
No,
And then we'll
I
like
grab the
turn.
remote. I'm like, rewind. That was fun. Let me see their expressions. I haven't been watching it all, but something happened. I'm like, I know that that mofo in the top left corner made a face when he said that. Rewind. Let me see it.
Um and so, you know, like your vocal performance, and like Kay said, the quality of it is a big component when it comes to your performance. And you know, also like we said, in many cases there's no video component to it at all. So, you know, that is important.
Clint says, I loved the look of angst on my player's face as I described how his estranged dead brother had pictures of the two of them stuck to his computer, but it was purely visual as he was too choked up to talk. And look, part of the reason, and even with the Emergency Power podcast, which is a podcast, and you cannot watch the video of it, but when we play, we are all on a call and we can visually see each other. Number one, it makes it easier to not talk over each other because you could tell when someone's wanting to talk. But like when I ran the second campaign of Godplane. And I'm going to speak a little carefully here because I don't want to spoil for anyone who maybe has not watched. You can watch the whole thing on our YouTube. I'm very proud of it. When we got to the trial for Bo, the big spotlight on Bo, I don't even remember, 4 episodes in, 5 episodes in, something like that. This was one of those things that I really wanted to get right. Because I had specifically written this not just for the character, but because I knew that this was something that my dear friend Candace struggled with. And I wanted to give Candace, the player, something that they could overcome in character. So I had written certain things and I had my GM notes and I was reading it off, ad-libbing a little bit, but keeping pretty close to the script because I had spent a lot of time on this wording because this was a gift, a mean, terrible torture my friend gift, but a gift for my friend. And I reached kind of the end where it was time for the character to make a decision. And I looked back to the screen and Candace has those big, beautiful brown eyes, and they were filled with tears. They were not crying, but I could see the tears in her eyes. And I'm like, oh no, did I go too far? Oh no. And like, even their posture had changed. They had like done this and we're like, and I'm like, oh no. But then I could see that, they were acting. They were like going through it. And there have been moments when I've been doing a scene and I have seen people's reactions and I'm like, I have to pull back because I can see even if 90% of the table is okay, that one person is not handling this well. And while that's very important for a horror game, y'all, I don't know if you know this, but the year of our Lord 2023 is pretty heckin' rough. We're all living through late stage capitalism. We've all got scars and trauma, and you never know what is going to set someone off. So, as a GM, even if everyone's face isn't put out there, I really do enjoy seeing everyone's face simply because that way I know if I'm pushing a button more easily. I don't think face cams are or should be required. I understand games that want them. But here's the thing, if you think you are the right person for this role, and especially if you can provide some kind of real or vocal performance, Candace gives so much as a player. Candace breaks me as a player. Um, at one point, we had a tally of how many times per week I could make Candace play because we were in Mothership and Godplane together, and it got gnarly. Um, but especially if you can provide a reel and be like, here's my vocal performance. I cannot be on camera. However, this is proof that I can deliver for your game. Don't be afraid to apply and say, here's an example. Applying and saying, I just can't be on camera, you're probably
Right.
not going to get a great response. But if you can do some kind of performance, because I even, for one of these games, I read, it might have been Emergency Power. I read an excerpt from Star Trek. I read a Star Trek monologue. They were like, you can come up with your own reel or you can read this. And I did. And they were like, that performance was so good, we knew we wanted you. Because if you can do that off of, and make it your own, we know you can perform. So if you're trying to figure out how to get around being on camera, be ready to say, I cannot do X, but here is proof that I can do Y.
And I think that's a good segue into like the other side of this is, we've spent a lot of time talking about, okay, how do you organize, how do you approach people as a GM when it comes to running your own game, but also how to approach people as a player, because most people in the space are players, not GMs,
Mm-hmm.
which seems weird to me because everyone I know runs games, but it's true. Most people play rather than run games. And if you want to be a um Rex says, I am sore tempted to record the Chrysler Turbo Encabulator for a voiceover demo. It is a joke. Techno speaks. Oh, absolutely. Listen, I need a copy of that. Like,
Thank you
send
for the
it my way.
follow.
Um, but like when it comes to being a player, like it's a little more challenging to reach out as a player to a GM and say, "Hey,
Mhm.
I'm available if you want to run a game." But definitely do that, and if you are going to do that, then get all your ducks in order.
And
Um,
especially if you're trying to apply to an established channel. And look, I know this is the most terrible advice to hear because it sucks, and I know this. Because as a person with a Discord channel, we're all in too many Discords. There are too many Discords.
yep.
But like, if you want to be on the initiative order, you should probably be in their Discord. If you want to be on 12-sided stories, should probably be in their Discord and occasionally show up to their streams and comment on occasion, because the more kind of once they know you that you show up, especially if you're if chat is dead and you were funny in chat and you spawn a conversation, they're going to remember you and they're going to be like, "Oh, yeah, that person applied or that person reached out and they hang out a lot." So much more likely to give you a chance than like, "Well, I've never heard of this person." Now, if you're a person who's just applying randomly and you've got a hell of a reel and you can say, "I've been on all of these shows," if you can show up and say, "I've been on Critical Role and I would like to play in your game," probably probably going to get the invite. Let's be real. But how many of us can say, "I've been on Critical Role and please let me play in your game"?
Right. And make it not only make yourself be seen, but make yourself easy to contact and
Mhm,
easy to research.
mhm.
Like the person who has a website with a minute and a half reel, even if it's just voiceover, is going to get a lot more yeses than the person who's like, "Hey, I just saw your stream and I want to be on it."
Mhm. Yeah.
And the original machine had a base plate of pre-fabulated. No, okay. Um,
JD says same thing for if you want to be a mod for a channel. Absolutely. Or just be JD. If you are JD, you
yes.
can mod wherever you want. Those are the rules. I don't make them up. I just enforce them. And Rex says there are people I met at PAX U who knew me because I my chat activity, right? Like that's just how it is. And again, you can be known for your performances. I showed up and people knew me because of my voice, and they were like, "Did you play the nervous half orc with the colander?" I don't even
Ooh,
really talk that much like Roxy, like in my normal presentation. I don't think.
listen,
David looks like he wants to debate me.
no, it's just now the next convention you go to, or the first convention I go with you, we're bringing the colander. I
Um,
may not have the juice to make you wear it on the floor, but we're bringing it. It's definitely coming to the bar.
I
Right.
have no shame. Are you kidding?
Right.
Are you kidding? If you've got a thing like that girl with honey wanders around PAX-U giving out honey sticks to people. Everyone knows that girl with honey. That's her username. That girl with honey. She gives out honey. I'll be the half orc with a colander. I'm down
Oh
for
man,
it.
we will get free drinks.
We'll miss you too, JD. Have a good week away. I hope you're doing something fun.
Yeah, Mimics
Yes.
and Misfits says saying that. I mean, that's how I met Kay.
um. So yeah, being my thing is backwards, so I couldn't find my handle. Um. So what I'm
I have
saying
that
is,
problem all the time.
There are lots of ways to be known. I don't need to hear more about your handle. I'm very ace.
That's fair.
There are lots of ways to be known. But the really like and this is true of any kind of marketing. And I will say this, nervous half orc with a colander is a feeling I didn't know I needed. Clint, we didn't get to talk about Roxy, my half orc paladin of the flying spaghetti monster. I play her in lots of charity games, and I play her in the home game that David runs. And I don't even know if the flying spaghetti monster is real or not. I left that up to the GM. But she believes in the flying spaghetti monster, and that's all that matters. My 6.5 foot resting grump face disaster queer is just the nicest, most nervous big goyle in the world. And I don't feel bad about saying I love her because she steals hearts in every game I get to play her in, and I am so fortunate to have been able to play her in several games.
My absolute favorite part of the paladin and cleric classes, and I think warlock too. Don't quote me on that, but I think warlock too is your god, your demigod, your patron does not have to be real. You just have to believe hard enough to make it happen.
It's not true for clerics. Clerics and warlock. I mean, that's what's weird is clerics, your god has to be real. Paladins are a charisma class, so you just have to believe it's real. Warlocks are where it gets weird because warlocks are infamous for your sugar daddy god will take your spells away if you don't,
Mm-hmm.
but they're also a charisma class. So that's what's weird to me is that doesn't we're going to do a whole breakdown on classes because I have really strong opinions about paladins and bards, charisma classes in general. I I am obsessed with charisma classes. David knows this. And I'm not saying people play them wrong because there is no wrong way to play your character, but charisma can be so much more than just a horny bard. And
Yep.
look, I am David knows. I have a horny himbo bard and I have in Starfinder basically their version of a paladin is a Solarian, which is basically a space Jedi, like a paladin that's also a Jedi, and that's a charisma based class and my Solarian is very horny.
I suddenly have a strong desire to play a very Catholic warlock where the warlock is always like, my god hates me and doesn't believe in me and won't give me powers, and therefore the powers don't work, even though the issue might just be tons of self-doubt and self-flagellation.
Mm,
Like, I I mean, I'd be stuck doing 1d4 damage at like level 12, but it would be hilarious. Um Raynox
I
says, does that mean the warlock is able to sweet talk the power from daddy? And
absolutely.
yes,
If you want
100%.
if you want a brilliant and turned on its head, and I'm not going to say exactly how this is because it is such a fun, not typical dynamic. But if you watch A Court of Fey and Flowers, which is on Dimension 20, and it's a Bria running a bunch of people through D&D 5e meets Good Time Society. So it is Jane Austen high society with fairies in the Feywild. And there is a very interesting warlock patron relationship there where negotiations are happening. And that's all I will say. It is a brilliant turn of what normally happens. And I love watching people get creative in that way. Also, I really want to run the Good Time Society. I don't have the book, but I really want to run the Good Time Society because Jane Austen letter writing as part of the TTRPG.
Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah, the
Ooh.
missives are an actual part of the game.
Mm.
Mhm. And being charismatic doesn't mean you are social. To me, it means you're socially competent. So, yes, my himbo Lord Bar talked to an enemy general into running away with us by appealing to his better nature. DM still hasn't forgiven me for that role. So, and at some point, I will do an entire episode talking about what charisma means. Because again, I'm not telling you to not play your horny bard. You should play your horny bard. If you're not playing your horny bard and living your best life with your horny bard, what's the point of D&D? But charisma doesn't necessarily mean you're just a horny bard. Charisma can be like so many of the rags to riches stories we hear around athletes or around musicians, and these come from nothing stories. It is driven off of charisma. It is a sense of self. It is a belief in self. And it is just this knowledge that no, this is what I'm supposed to be, and this is what I'm going to do. And I won't stop because this is who I am and what I have to do to be me. That is charisma. And honestly, for those of you who don't know, I'm playing on kind of the darker side of that with Soul on the Emergency Power podcast. Just throwing that out there. Like, yes, they're the horny. They've But I'm kind of going, what happens when you don't have someone to call you on your BS? What happens when you don't have someone to keep you in line with kind of that belief? But charisma is also that person who stands silently with their arms folded
Yeah,
and intimidates the
Geralt of
whole
Rivia got
and
Riz.
standing there frowning, and then everyone's debating and they go, "Mm," and everyone stops and looks at that person and agrees with whatever they just grunted about. That is also charisma. It's a power of self. Presence. You notice when this person walks into the room. They have a spotlight on them. Yeah, all of these examples. You don't have to be super eloquent. In fact, one of my favorite tropes is the incredibly powerful persona who just scowls and doesn't really talk, but whenever they make any sort of indication, everyone listens.
Yeah, and for a charisma, you don't have to be likable,
Mhm.
because you know who was really charismatic? Steve Jobs. And I'm not saying that Steve Jobs is on the list of ghosts I would fist fight. Um, yes, there is a list of ghosts I would fist fight. Um, but I
I know
think that
you haven't seen the Critical Role exchange about have you ever met a ghost that didn't need to be punched, but, like, that is running through my head now, and thank you.
and yes, there is a list, but like, if yeah, you don't have to be likable, you just have to be influential.
Mhm.
Because there are plenty of people who are charismatic, and you sit around going, who would follow this bozo to the bathroom, let alone into battle?
Look
And
at
yet,
all of these weird, creepy cult leaders.
right?
David and I both just watched the Waco documentary, and, like, look, y'all,
Yeah.
I grew up in Texas. I was so close to Waco. I had a track meet cancel because Waco was burning. That was in my backyard. So watching that was a little bit traumatic. And you're looking at this guy going, how? Why? He's so creepy. He's so weird. But he was charismatic and he grabbed certain people.
What and I'm not going to deviate into a whole thing about David Koresh, and I forget what the cult is called, but the we ain't coming out people is there's video of him where he's shot, and he's with children of the cult members, and he says with a straight face, I am the second coming of God. And just him there with the kid, and then the kid, and then he's like, who takes care of you? And it's just like, if I saw this man with my offspring, even without, but especially with my offspring, and then in the same sentence he says, I am God himself, then I'd be like, Timmy, come here, we're getting out of here.
Right.
It's time to go. It's time to boogie.
Yes. Very quickly to recap, Mimics and Misfits says intimidation is a charisma skill too. Just saying. Exactly. That side is too often forgotten. I love playing like the very, very awkward, like, oh my God, I'm really do this or I will murder you. I'm sorry, was that scary? That's one of my favorite tropes. David knows this all too well.
So,
Um,
fun fact, Roxy in our home game, there's a spider invasion, because apparently I put a spider at least one spider in every game, and there I put all the spiders in this game.
All of
And
them.
so
And zombie spiders.
right, uh, and during it, they go into like the town hall, like the whole party goes into the town hall because they're trying to organize defense and recovery and all sorts of things. And the mayor is being a racist shit, but in like the polite way. And Roxy needs a thing to happen, and the mayor is quibbling. So she walks over, passes a strength check, grabs this man, picks him up, um, and then rolls a nat 20 on intimidation. And Roxy has like a +8, +10 to intimidation on top of that. And I was like, oh man, how do we? Yeah, he pees on himself. So P runs down his legs and onto Roxy's feet, and then Roxy has to keep a straight face while like growling at this man. If you don't shut up and do what I want, bad things will happen. And I
In the
forget
most
what
polite
Roxy
way.
said,
In the
but
most
yeah, it was
polite way.
incredibly polite. And
We
I was like,
came
yeah,
all the way here. We are trying to help you. Please don't make me angry. Big old tusks.
yeah, he was 10 out of 10. Would recommend.
Rex Verde said in reference to Steve Jobs, LOL, bring it, you unliving nerd. Mimics and Misfits wants to see the list of the ghosts that you would fistfight. Uh, Rayank wants to know who doesn't have a list of specters they would fistfight. Jakey
Right.
says she can't even look at photos of Charles Manson or Rasputin. Totally fair. Watching the
Listen,
Waco thing was so uncomfortable for me. Uh, Fun fact, Roxy, the concept for my Paladin of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, came out of the Heaven's Gate cult. Not that I wanted to play a cult member, but in case you don't know, there's apparently two members of the Heaven's Gate cult that are still alive. And they were tasked with staying alive so they could distribute VHS tapes of the cult's message to anyone who wrote in. So I went down this whole spiraling rabbit hole of what kind of religious isolation does that feel like? And how do you recreate that in a TTRPG? Because in any TTRPG, basically, the gods are still alive. Like the gods are there. So you say, yeah, I worshipped a god who's now dead. Yeah, cool. That's normal. Lots of gods are died. The Raven Queen took over a god's position. Like, that's no problem. Like, how do you create that feeling? And the answer was you worship the one god that everyone knows is a joke. So that's how a Paladin of the Flying Spaghetti Monster came out of the Heaven's Gate cult. Um,
ooh-wee. Um,
Clint says, I love when players use intimidation or taunt to support an ally in Savage Worlds. Oh, how do you assist is one of my favorite questions because it either catches the player completely off guard or they're like, okay,
right.
so, and David will confirm every time I'm like, okay, so.
Yeah, buckle up because here we go. Also, I have had um more than one woman and at least two non-binary people look me dead in the eyes and say, Rasputin, he could get it. And I don't, a little bit of dating advice. If you think that there's someone out that there's no way that there could be someone out there for you, Rasputin had an entire royal family and an entire superpower by the throat. And all these years later, people are like, him? Yeah, yeah. Bananas. I don't understand. I don't understand.
I'm
But
too
there's someone
aced.
out there for
I'm like, why?
like he got a whole
Why?
song. Yeah, one of the most out of pocket creations in the history of music is the 70 disco goes way too hard Rasputin song. I could listen, I could do an entire episode just an entire episode of the talk show about that song and the music video that goes with it and the band and just every aspect, how it just distilled the 70s down into a 4-minute song. Listen,
Ooh,
10 out of 10.
Clint just said the 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 intimidation taunt that his player used was, "Are you going to screw this up like you did your last relationship?"
Ooh, ooh.
Which, y'all, I got to play in the Rainbow Roll with, GM Connie Chang, and I had to do a breakup scene between my asshole character, who was a version of Soul from the Emergency Power podcast, and Connie Chang's NPC. And I'm upset with myself because I've gone back and look, I watch my performances so I can get better, and that's painful and terrible. And if you do stream and or record your stuff, you should go back and watch/listen so you can get better, but also it is terrible and it is torture. And I don't want anyone to have to do it, but you should, but it's terrible. And I went back and watched I watched the whole game, but I watched that breakup scene, and the character's name was Ruin. And I'm going to be honest, my character was terrible. There was I was playing a truly horrible character who started the not quite an argument with the question, "Why are you like this?" Right? And I thought I had said this, and apparently I didn't. It was in my brain, and it apparently didn't come out of my mouth. I thought that Soul had said, "Living up to your name, are you?"
Ooh, ooh, savage.
Yeah, and I didn't, so I guess I'm not as horrible as I thought I was, but I thought I had said it. There is nothing better than, like, having that kind of out of body experience where you finish the scene and you think back and you're like, "Oh, I could be a very bad person. Oh, I could be very savage if I let myself."
Um, Rex says my himbo lore bard used charisma intimidation to browbeat someone out of town. I love getting to chew on the scenery when intimidating. Um, One thing that I'm really looking forward to is I am at long last firing up a home game for a couple friends of mine, and I've created more than one NPC where I can just be the biggest bag of dicks, and I'm really looking forward to it because apparently, if I was a charisma class, which I am not, but I would have extra points in like roast and intimidate.
Meanwhile, David got to witness my himbo bard. We were
Ooh,
playing Wild Beyond the
that
Witchlight.
K
We were in the
charisma.
Witchlight Carnival, and I was trying to become the monarch because face character. And so my weird fucking himbo bard, like the paladins, like, I'll launch you into the air and then you can do a flip and like land to do this thing. So I'm like, cool, druid, can you druid craft some flowers for me? And so without telling anyone what was going to happen, and the faces were incredible, climbs up on the paladin's shoulders to get launched, takes a bite out of the flowers, just like, "Ow," gets all the petals in the mouth, gets launched, flips through the air, polymorphs himself into a fairy dragon, spits the petals, breathes glitter fairy dragon breath, and then flies down to the ground. There are different ways to do charisma.
You should tell them about the
Oh god.
fireworks.
Oh god. That takes so much explaining. That
It
take
does.
The party thought that my character asked the NPC to get him fireworks. The whole party thought he was going to commit arson.
Yep. I was looking
My
forward to it.
character's like, "I love the carnival. It's my favorite place. I'm a Mr. Light fanboy. Why would I hurt the carnival?" The Gith Yankees like, I trust them completely. Everyone else is like, turned out he
And
bribed the NPC. Oh,
my character was like, I trust completely to use these fireworks for no good.
bribed the NPC to set off the fireworks after he kissed the paladin.
and
It
it
was
was
wonderful
just
and terrible.
magic. It was magic.
It was
It was
magical. It was
awkward.
terrible.
It was ooey gooey.
I didn't think the
Uh,
kiss was going to happen. But we've gotten way off topic.
yep.
And I want to reel us back because the last thing that I want to make sure we cover when it comes to reaching out to players is when do you reach out to players? Now, there is a part of me that wants to say there is no such thing as too soon, but that's not correct. If you ask me today, can you play in a game in July? If it's a one shot, I can say I'll mark it on my calendar, but I don't know if work's going to decide over a weekend I have to travel. You know, I can make sure that it's the first on my list compared to other games. But I'm going to say the best way to ensure that maximum people have availability is to reach out 3 weeks to a month in advance. Put out your feelers, say it's going to be these days at this time. Or if it's a one shot, that's even easier. This day at this time, can you make it? And if they say yes, send a Google Calendar invite. The number of people who are at least semi professional on this, who play in reoccurring games, who have been on the air streaming in regular campaigns or recording for regular podcasts, who will 100% forget about that game, no matter how many times you ping them, unless it is on their calendar. Make a Google Calendar invite, remind a week before, and give a 24-hour notice, give or take. It will save you so much stress and so much rescheduling. Once I started browbeating some of my friends into doing this, guess what? Their recording schedules got a lot more regular because people didn't forget. And you can't blame people, right? They've got their regular game. Like, yes, it's easy for David and I to be like, no, I can't record on Tuesday at 6 p.m. I've got this. But outside of this, a lot of my stuff is question mark. And I will 100% say, yes, sure, that's fine. I can show up for that. Send me an invite. And if I don't get an invite and 2 days later someone asks me, can you do this day at this time? I check my schedule's open, then sure, now I'm double booked. I might even end up triple booked. Google Calendar imports, yes, are basically everything. If it is not, I work a full time job. I stream this. I stream for I record for Emergency Power, and I do additional streams and charity stuff on the side. I live and die by my Google Calendar. If it is not on my Google Calendar, David will schedule, we have to talk about a thing for a project and put a time block on my calendar, or else I will forget.
Also, um, Kay's calendar is color coded,
Don't call me out like this. Why you gotta
and
make
it
me out?
looks like a kindergartner went at it with crayons because Kay is so busy that it's all colors. And I understand that some people don't like to use alphabet products. Some people don't like to use Apple products. If you don't want a Google Calendar, if you don't want an Apple calendar, that's fine. However, make sure you have a calendar program. I don't care if you get an ASPCA calendar
Mhm,
and put it on your wall and then write stuff on it.
mhm.
My writing partner has a whiteboard that has a calendar embossed on it, and she scribbled. Do it because I I have been on this earth for a very long time. I did not start using a calendar until after the pandemic, like during the you know
How did you
dur-
survive?
at one point in time I had a very good memory, and also I'm very good at avoiding things that I don't want to do. I'm very good at it. But ooh wee, between working with stuff with Kay and stuff I have with clients and like social engagements, because apparently I have like a ton of friends, which baby David did not anticipate. You need to keep track,
And
because this year I've been double booked. I've
and
had to go see the same movie with two different people on two different sides of town at the same time.
and I'm not gonna lie, I get angry if I agree to be on something and someone doesn't send me a calendar invite. Like, I will go out of my way to make sure I've added it myself, but if I forget to add it and then they don't send me one, I'm like, I recognize this is my fault, but also, um, Mimps and Misfits asked a very good question. If you put out a casting call, is it frowned upon to ask/accept folks outside the casting call? Look, number one, um, David and I have put out a couple casting calls. We've recruited for a lot of different things. If you put out a casting call, and this is no tea, no shade, no slight to anyone because a lot of these people are talented, you are going to get 90 to 95% one singular type of person of a particular gender, of a particular skin color, of a particular sexual orientation. Because that's what happens in these spaces. David and I are very big on let's make sure we have diversity at the table. And that includes tables that I appear at. I am super excited that I get to play a charity game. It's with someone I don't know, but I respect. And I just was sent an email, CC'd the other people who are going to be playing. And I'm like, probably going to be the only non masculine presenting person at this table. Pretty sure we're all going to be of the same complexion. Pretty sure I'm going to be the only queer person. Darn, that sucks. But I have no control over organizing that. So there is, unless you come out and state, we are only bringing people to the table who apply to this open casting call. Most of the open casting calls I know and have known, the organizer has reached out to 1 to 4 people that they want at the table. Be that just people they want to play with, or be that I know this person is trans or a person of color or queer or a woman, and they are incredibly talented, and I want them to be part of this. I want to make sure these seats are filled with these people, and then the additional seats we will open up to a casting call. I've also known where people, did an open casting call and realized if we run it like this, there's going to be like one non-binary femme presenting person and everyone else is a white straight dude. And so I'm going to fill 2 of those seats with white straight dudes, and I am now going to start reaching out to people of different ethnicities and sexual orientations to make sure that my table is not mayonnaise. Um
That it's not napkin flavored nonsense.
exactly. I mean, I do enjoy some nonsense, and I have a great use for and respect for napkins. That said, maybe some other things in our TTRPGs. So unless you make a promise that I will only recruit from this open casting call, if someone's upset that they didn't get, and number one, how is anyone going to know that unless they say I got invited on, and then yeah, they got invited on. Like, look at how awesome they are. Of course they got invited on. Like, are you mad that you didn't get invited on? Be awesome, and you'll get invited on. The other thing that I'm going to say is if you create if you are doing open casting calls and you want to be, as they say, part of the solution, not part of the problem, if you want to have more diverse people come to your casting calls, Make sure you call that out because people will disqualify themselves, or even if they don't disqualify themselves automatically, they will not be sure if this is a space that is safe for them. David and I had a lot of talks with people both times we ran the God plane because when you are performing, even if it's TTRPGs over Zoom, you are in the safety of your own house, you are playing with people you hopefully know, you make yourself very vulnerable. You tell a lot about yourself. You put yourself, even if it's not a horror game, but especially in horror games, you put yourself in positions that can be scary, that can be hurtful, that can be uncomfortable. And it's really difficult to do that if you're already thinking, I don't know if I belong, if this is a table that wants me there, if there is a space for someone like me at that table. David, I am talking a lot here. Do you have any
So
thoughts or opinions?
a lot. And one, so like my first thought is about tokenism because
Mhm,
I've, like you said, I'm the only person at this table that's not blank. And uh, I have a couple of opinions about this. One, representation matters,
mhm.
and the reason we don't talk about cishet white guy representation is because before um, Critical Role, if you thought Dungeons and Dragons, if you thought tabletop RPGs, if you thought Warhammer or Magic the Gathering, then in your head it was a bunch of white guys sitting around the table. Um,
Usually
even
bearded,
though, right,
usually late middle age.
even though things like Magic the Gathering, actually Magic in particular, is extremely popular in other countries. Friend of the channel, that Cato, packs a magic deck whenever he travels internationally, and he'll touch down in a city, no matter how small, and find a game shop. And even if he doesn't speak the language, will sit down and play Magic the Gathering with people. And like, I've seen him in Discord calls with Indians and Singaporeans and people from all over, with like a camera on a tabletop, playing Magic with people he doesn't share a language with. Um, but representation matters, and seeing people who look like you in places that you think are
Mhm,
cool is really important. um like, even something as simple as, well, not simple, but like, even an obvious example like Black Panther. Like, I showed up to like an 11:15 on a Wednesday showing of a horror movie when Black Panther 2 was running, and there were old black ladies like there to see it. People who otherwise would never see a Marvel movie, because they're like, not only is are these like black people, but there are powerful black women in this, and they went out to see it. So if you're putting together a table and you reach out to a bunch of people of color, a bunch of people who are queer and part of the LGBT community, and you get one, great. Don't feel like, and that's a conversation you have with that person,
mhm,
because on the flip side, being the only representative is an intimidating thing. Like, I have enough practice and I have enough sense of self whereby it's something that doesn't really occur to me. But there are people in these communities where if they are the only person, they're like,
mhm,
maybe I don't want to. And conversely, there are other people who feel threatened if they're not the only person. But that's a whole
mhm.
different conversation.
That's
Um,
problematic on a different
right.
level.
Um, but If you get somebody, great. And if you can't, that's okay. Um, because realistically, like, being a person of color, being a part of the LGBT community in this space and in many other spaces is still a scary, intimidating, and in
Mhm.
some cases dangerous thing, especially depending on where you are located, both in and out of the United States.
Yeah.
Like, um, a prominent, queer or gay TTRPG performer in Afghanistan or Iran or Saudi Arabia is going to be a very different animal than someone performing from West Hollywood.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, but if you can get them, great, and if you can't, like, I get it.
Yeah.
But at the very least, make the effort and reach out
Yeah.
to people in the community.
Um, Again, one of my favorite lines that I say a lot is if you are not deliberately inclusive, you will be accidentally exclusive. Um, and pay attention, right? And maybe not every single game, especially if you're first starting out and you don't have a lot of you don't personally know a lot of performers of color or a lot of queer performers. Again, it can be people can self-insulate. They can protect themselves by not, playing with people that they don't know. And it can be a little challenging. It's not an excuse to not try. It's not an excuse to say, "Well, I did an open casting call and get anyone of color." Reach out. And if you reach out and you just can't make it work within a reasonable time frame, that's one thing. Start reaching out sooner next time and like learn. I remember I've now like I had a moment of like joy when I reached the point where I could reach out. I was telling one of my friends of color that like, hey, I'm in this game. I really would like to bring in someone else of color. And they're like, oh, I've got like 10 people I could introduce you to. Like I knew like I'd reached that level of trust that they would say, hey, this white person is cool. You should go play with them. Like that really is a mark. And that isn't something that happens simply because I showed up. It's because I checked in and I made sure and I said like, you know, um one of my characters soul, some of their story is a particular social issue that could also be interpreted as the story of a person of color. Because like X-Men is both like a story of being gay, but also a story of being a person of color. And like there are many different ways to interpret it. So like I reached out, I'm like, hey, this is the angle I'm doing it. If I do anything that's a problem, and they were like, holy no, I get it. And it's really cool that you think about that. And thank you for like being a good ally, was what they said. I'm like, well, I don't know, I'm a good ally. I'm trying, but you have to try. And if you show up and if you consistently do your best to populate your table with not just one person of color, not just queer person. If you consistently have all white dudes and then one trans queer woman of color
Yeah.
that ticks all those boxes, it's going to show.
Yep.
If you don't actively work to expand your network of diverse creators, trust me, it's going to be noticed.
And there is a long, long history with both individuals and companies of exploiting that connection, of going, here, see, we put this, we put one of your people on here.
Mhm.
And Kay and I talk about this all the time, where I'll sit down and on Twitch and on YouTube and click through other people's streams, other people's RPG performances, to check out what they're doing, to see if there's like something cool that we can incorporate here. Um, and I honestly have less of a problem with a table where it's all like straight white dudes, and it's obvious that these five guys have been friends since high school and have been playing for 20 years and are also excellent performers, rather than someone who every campaign every one shot has one person that ticks a box, and it's often not the same person every time, but one person who ticks a bunch of boxes, and then they're like, okay, that's done. That, mm, um, and it's tough to put into words, but you can tell the difference between someone going, "This is who I could find, and I'm glad they're here," versus, "Oh, I'm glad that's done."
Yeah.
Um, and whether it is a person of color, whether it is a member of the LGBT community, or literally anyone else, an important thing to communicate is that people are safe at your table, and that you are open and encouraging about feedback, especially about things that make someone uncomfortable at your table. Um, and that circles back to what should you have prepared? What should you be ready to go with out the gate? Be open and communicative with your players and say, "Listen, these things are going to be in the game. These things are not." Like in my home game, I said there are going to be no spiders. Now, do any of my players have a problem with spiders? That is neither here nor there. I'm like, listen, there have been spiders. Spiders are a common enough thing. We're not doing spiders this time. Um,
Yep.
but everyone needs to feel safe at your table, and you need to make it clear that they are safe at your table.
And that's one thing we'll talk about, like, hey, here's the things that are going to be in the game. Here's things that are not going to be in the game. If you have things that are on this list that's a problem, let us know. Also, especially if we're playing a horror game, we encourage you to maybe some of the things that you're a little bit, "Eh, I'm not sure I'm cool with that." Maybe push those boundaries and let us kind of play with it, knowing that there's an ejector seat. The minute you say, "I'm done with spiders," spiders are gone. We're done talking about it. It's not going to be discussed ever again. You are not locked in. Um, but how do you know if you're participating in tokenism? Well, that's a little tough, right? And sometimes a thing that can I have definitely seen people who started out going like, "Okay, we're gonna have the token fill in the blank person." And then that person was really awesome. And they were like, "Oh, next game you should bring your friend." And they brought a friend who was also a woman or queer or of color. And suddenly they were no longer engaging in tokenism, not because they wanted to change, but just because they went outside of their comfort zone and discovered something awesome. It's actually really difficult to draw a hard line and say this is tokenism and this is not, because a lot of it is kind of what's in your heart. Um, I have spoken to both David and Candace extensively because I adore Candace and I want Candace to be in every game I play if I could, right? But also, I don't want Candace to feel tokenized. And I don't want it to look like I am simply using Candace, because I think Candace is just an incredible performer and everyone should have Candace, and I can't keep Candace all to myself. Um,
I mean, I'm going to try, but
exactly. Um, their partner might have something to say about that, but um, if your circle is never expanding, if the number of people who tick a box is never above exactly ticking that box, even if that's not your intention, it's probably going to look a little tokenistic.
and either way requires some reflection.
Yeah. Um,
JD
again,
says,
it
"Oh, nope,
yep.
continue."
JD says,
JD says, "A saying I remember from a work event was the difference between being invited to the party and being asked to dance." And that is a
that's beautiful.
fantastic
Yes.
analogy.
And one of the things that I won't say who, because I don't want to, I won't give the specifics of this, but I had a person who was from a marginalized background tell me, I really like playing with this group, but I am the only person from this marginalized background in any of the games, and that includes the NPCs. And look, as a white person, it is a little there is some danger, at least perceived danger around playing NPCs outside of your lived experience. And like, no, I should not create a TTRPG set in Africa, populated by a bunch of indigenous people. That's not a thing I should do. However, it is also bad if I am, yes, including NPCs. If I am playing a game set in Baltimore and the only black character in my entire world is the person of color playing in my game, that's also a
Yeah.
problem. David, I am super lucky in that I have a creative partner in David. So when we worked on Visal, when we were building Godplane, and I wanted Visal to be a woman of color. And I sat down with David and was talking about, all right, like here are things I want to do. And here are concerns that I have as a white person. Like, help me. Like, don't speak on behalf of all black people and tell me what isn't okay. So I can say, no, my black friend said this is fine. But like, what do I need to be aware of? Right? Because it's often not even where is the line so I don't step over it, but it's like, where am I even getting close to the line so I can be aware of where my best intentions could come across as less than good intentions. These are all things you have to consider because, yes, there is a danger in playing something outside of your lived experience. There's also a danger in that's not my lived experience, so it's not going to exist in my world. Both of those things can be racist. One of them most definitely is. It's not easy. Hey, Zykram. I think David lost some friends in that hair, so we can at least count as a few people.
Yep. Absolutely.
Um, so again, that doesn't exactly answer the question because there's no hard and fast, quick, easy answer to any of this. If you are, and again, um, one of my favorite statements, diverse worlds are just more interesting, full stop. Exactly. I went hunting for some Pathfinder 2E. I didn't want podcasts. I wanted actual plays to have on. I don't know why. I like video more than podcasts, even if I don't look at them all the time. That's just me. Um, hey, crew. And I specifically had to be like, I want diverse tables. I am looking for tables that have women and trans people and non binary people and people of color. I'm not saying, like, look, Matt Mercer and Brennan Lee Mulligan are brilliant storytellers, right? Dropped my pen. I'm not saying that straight white men or straight ish white men don't have good stories to tell. But especially in a table in a collaborative storytelling, I kind of want some more diverse stories. I'm looking for some more interest from my storytellers. And yes,
What
the
I
players are storytellers too. Continue.
what I have found is something that you referenced earlier is not that people think, oh, well, this table full of white guys is going to be bad, but um, that people have seen people of color, trans people, and the like, and gone, wow, that person is really good, and it's like, yes, but why are you surprised?
Yeah.
Like it's almost as if people can be surprised that people who don't look like white dudes, like straight white guys, can be eloquent, can be great performers, um, and like what's it called? The old chestnut. Oh, you're very well spoken.
I
Like
was gonna go on to Google Meets and message you that so I didn't have to say it
right,
on the
like
stream.
the
You're so articulate.
and I've heard that my entire life, and I'm sitting here going, I'm a professional writer. Like I have classical acting training. Like like I'm supposed to be able to use the words pretty good. Why is this a surprise?
There
So
was there was a TikTok of this Karen walking up to this young Asian woman at a bus stop who just interrupts her conversation. Is like, "Your English is so good." And without missing a beat, the young woman looks back and goes, "And your racism is so casual."
right, right. And it's like I'm from Pacoima. What do you expect? Who? Yeah.
But and here's the thing I will say, kind of in closing when it comes to tokenism and inclusion and trying to make sure that you have diverse tables, being a champion of that diversity and that inclusion. There is a road to allyship, and it is not you wake up one day and you're good. You're there. You're an ally. Everything you do from here on out is good and ally and whatever you're an ally to approved. That's not the case. It is a forever journey. Things are always moving, things are always changing, climates are changing, verbiage is changing. We live in a very liquid time. The goal, if you want to be an ally, is not to hit that finish line and say, "Well, I'm approved." The goal is to be 10% better than you were yesterday. You don't have to be perfect. You are going to mess up. I say this every time. I've messed up. I have I have dead named dear friends because
Ooh.
I got excited and forgot. I have misgendered dear friends because I messed up. I have said things that I didn't know was a racist thing because I just didn't know and someone corrected me. And my job when that happens is to say, "I am so sorry. I did not know. I hurt you. I sincerely apologize. It will never happen again," and to change my behavior, right? The goal is not to wake up today or tomorrow and be perfect. The goal is to be better than you were yesterday. And if you are just a little bit better every single day, you are making the world a better place. So, how do you make your tables and your stream and your channel and your space a safe and welcoming place for everyone? Doesn't happen overnight. It's an effort. You have to think about it, you have to work towards it, and it might take time. But sooner or later, you're going to go to friends and say, "I would really like help finding some more diverse players for this next game." And they throw you in a chat with 20 people who are all eager to play with you because if so and so says you're a good person to play with, they want to play with you. And that feels damn good.
And one of the things that I have, what one of the complaints about diversity and inclusivity that I have fielded over the years is, well, I don't know anybody like that.
That's a you
And
problem.
well, I mean, and in some cases, it's just like if you live in the
Thanks for hanging out,
panhandle
Clint.
of
Right.
Oklahoma, if you live in outside of Lincoln, Nebraska,
Yeah.
you're going to have a really hard time meeting people from Southeast Asia,
And
meeting goalies.
David and I were
Um,
talking about my high school had exactly 2 black people in it. They were brothers and sisters, and their last name was White.
and I have a really good example to point to now in Curse of Strahd because I don't know any of the Romani, not a one. I know people who hate him, but because I have known some Eastern Europeans, but I didn't have to know these people personally to hear about and internalize. Oh, referring to them in this way is racism. Oh, these artifacts from the ancient times, the 1980s, is or is no longer acceptable and wasn't even acceptable at the time. Um, these what was okay to refer to them as before is now an offensive term. Like I can identify with that. Um, and so it's for me as someone who has experienced this, it's easy for me to go, okay, I will take that extra step. I will Google something on Wikipedia and get a good answer about it. Um,
Mhm.
but it's important to look at all the aspects of what it is you're doing, especially in a public sense, and say, okay, let me really look at um, the cultural impact. Let me look at um, the fallout of what things say about people.
Mhm.
Um, and so it's important to take that extra step. And well, like I said, I don't know any of the Romani, uh, but you better believe if I'm ever running Curse of Strahd, it's going to be heavily rewritten.
Yeah.
And realistically, I'm not going to run Curse of Strahd for a lot of reasons, including but not limited to the racial and gender overtones in it.
And also, like, I don't have to know someone personally of a particular background to know that I shouldn't use a slur or something that's insulting to them. And if someone that I don't know well, especially if they're of that background, comes to me and says that word or that term or whatever you're using is offensive, I say, "Cool, it's gone, deleted from my vocabulary." If I have a relationship with them and they have the spoons to explain to me, if I feel comfortable to ask, I would like to know why so I can avoid, making a similar mistake in the future. That is a kindness that they can do for you, but that is not their job. It is your job to look it up, to Wikipedia it. And if you were fortunate enough to have the relationship and ask, can you help me out? Can you give the dumb white person a little bit of a helping hand here? Then you have a really good friend who is willing to put in work for you. But know that that is what that is. That is a gift that they are giving you. Um, yeah, She is the Ancient is a Curse of Strahd rewrite where Strahd is a woman, and it's better. Still not great. There's still a lot of issues, but it's definitely better.
Mimics and Misfits says, and sadly, it can also mean making difficult decisions to defend inclusion. Um, and an important thing to remember is if you are getting into performance, whether as a GM or a player, if you are doing something for a public setting, no matter whether it's about race or identity or orientation or literally any other aspect of what you're doing, there is there are going to be hard decisions, and it's
Mhm,
important that you are ready to face them, because if you're not ready to make those decisions, and if you're
mhm.
not ready to stand by your decisions, and if you're not ready to change for the safety and comfort and inclusion and quality of performance of your players and your product, then you're not ready for prime time.
And that goes beyond, the kind of inclusion we've been talking about. There are individuals that we could have had on this show that would have been so good for our viewership, but we learned things about this individual and we said, "You know what? We can't have this person on the show because it may not be open knowledge yet, but they are problematic and we don't want that associated with our brand, but we don't want people who watch our show to feel uncomfortable who might know about some of these things." There are people that, we just straight up will not invite. There are people that we have stopped playing and interacting with because we learned how they were treating people. We learned that, they were using their position in the TTRPG space to pressure people into relationships or pseudo cheat on partners. And we don't want to be associated with that, even if they could have provided us cool opportunities. So those are the decisions you have to make.
And you'll hear in certain spheres talk about cancel culture, and the reality is this: no one is entitled to your friendship, no one is entitled to your association. If someone's shitty, it is your right and really your responsibility to be like, we can't hang out anymore.
Mhm.
And that is true in your personal relationships, and that's true in your professional relationships. And that's not cancel culture. Um, that is how human society has always worked.
And remember, the
Um,
people who scream about cancel culture are the same ones who are voting to take away your constitutional rights.
right.
So if that's
And
not cancel culture, I don't know what is.
um, and they, like, if you look around, if you're at a bar and the bar is full of assholes, then you are a friend of assholes. You're one of the assholes, and you can stand on your pillar and say, oh well, I'm not like these guys, but you spend all your time with them.
Mhm.
And who we associate with, who we choose to give time and energy to, whether we like it or not, says a lot about who we are as people.
And
And
even if you are not one of those assholes, if you're hanging out every Friday at the bar with all of the assholes, guess who's going to be known as one of the assholes?
right. And like Kay said, there are people that we've chosen not to play with, that we've chosen um not to have on the show, not just because, oh, they don't fit our brand, not because they're not proponents of the things that we are. It's that I wouldn't tolerate the things that they've done in my personal life. Like, these are people who I'm like, gross. And that's really all I need. Like,
Mhm.
if I'm at the very beginning stages of getting to know someone, like bringing someone on the talk show who I've never seen before, where I talk to them half an hour, 45 minutes before the show runs, and I've already heard all these things about them. um it's not on me to go and hunt someone down and go, hey, I heard this about so and so, is it true? Because like, I need to make sure if there's like, in a lot of cases where there's smoke there's fire, and there are too many awesome people, there are too many great, brilliant, talented, wonderful people, for me to waste time trying to chase down uh people who kind of suck for one reason or another. Like,
Mhm.
I don't want, like chat, you guys will never see me working with someone where I secretly think, you know, that's a shitty person. Like, there's never going to be any text messages leaked in a trial that says, oh, David thought this person was a dickbag the whole time. Like, it's not going to happen.
Um, yeah, JD says a few years ago, I made the decision to be a lot more intentional about who I spend my time with, even slash especially digitally, and I'm so glad I did so. Like if you were saying someone in Lincoln, Nebraska might have a hard time finding someone of a different background than them, but the internet is full of wonderful people that you can sponge up life lessons from. Very true. First you got to step outside of your comfort zone. There is I'm not excusing not doing it, but there is a little bit of it. And Rex says, would I have a beer with this person? Would I let them watch my dog when I was away? Mimic says, the second one is so real, referring to the dog. If I'm not leaving my pet with you, are we even IRL friends?
Right.
Substitute cat in K's face. That's fine. I mean, I will not watch your dog, but you also don't want me to watch your dog, but I will very gladly watch your cat. And we have now reached almost the 2-hour mark. So we had a lot to cover, even though we got a little bit distracted with charisma based characters, but that's clearly a
Hmm.
topic we're going to have to circle back to. Um, Chat, as always, you have been amazing. Give yourselves a round of approval. I need to add an applause audio button. Like that's one of the things I need to give so we can like applaud you all. Um, Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for all your questions. Thank you for your commentary. And yes, circling way back, how do you get people to show up to your table? Milkshakes do help. I have heard that they bring all of the boys to the yard.
Even if they're lactose intolerant.
I mean, I believe there are dairy free milkshakes.
But listen, this goes into the whole debate of like milk. What is milk? Is oat milk and almond milk? I'm not going to say uh, uh, nut and in the same because ooh gross. But even ignoring that debate, if you have dairy products in your milkshake, people who are lactose intolerant will still drink them. It will still attract them because people who are lactose intolerant are agents of chaos. I know this because I am one of
um, Broke my sorcerer's fingers so he couldn't cast spells. Ouch. JD used to bring her GM smoothies. Yes, there's no faster way to your GM's heart than to bring snacks. Um, Thank you all again. You are wonderful. Let's see who we got, what we got going on today.
them. Rin the Orc.
Oh yeah, Ren is streaming again. Great. That is excellent. For those of you who don't know, Ren is an old friend of mine. She does incredible art streams, and she is an artist for League of Legends. So you can go watch some really cool stuff there. And she often gives away. She's also like one of those like influencers. So if you play League of Legends, she gives away like characters and character skins and some of the cool chroma stuff that you can only get through there. But all in all, she's super sweet and she does really gorgeous art. And so we're gonna flicker on over there and say hello. I'm going to switch this over to the end screen and then we'll head on over. Thank you all again. Thank you for hanging out. I will be streaming Pokemon tomorrow. We will get a shiny. And not tomorrow, Thursday.
Thursday.
I'll be
Yeah.
streaming Pokemon on Thursday. The new episode of the Emergency Power Podcast, which has all sorts of dishing on my character. Took 20 episodes, but we got there happening. And then Friday, we'll have a Ducky stream. David will be streaming Overwatch 2.
Yep.
So come by for that chaos. I promise it's going to be a good time and you'll get to see our new overlays.
Yep.
So thank you all. You are wonderful. Be good to yourselves, be excellent to others, and we will see you soon.